Welcome back, I'm Ryan from Bluewood Gaming, and in this video I am doing my final build video for Nioh. This is the build that I will be taking into the DLC when it comes out in a few months, and I will also be taking this into PvP unless something happens where they say nerf some things or make some things stronger. So let's get right into this. I am level 219 as of now, but you don't really need to be this level. In fact, you should probably be about 30 levels higher than I am. Actually, a bit more than that. You should be almost level 300 for this build. This build requires quite a few things to go right. This is a very popular build for extremely high level Amrita farming. The thing is, not very many people are to that point yet. I have finished the entirety of New Game Plus and most of the New Game Plus, most of the Twilight missions. I've done all the extra side missions, just pretty much everything that you can do in New Game Plus. I've done most of that with this build. I went through the final 3 areas in New Game Plus with this build with relative ease, actually. That's just how strong this build is. So starting out, you're going to need the Fanatic set, which you've probably heard before. So that is why we have 7 body and 7 strength. We are trying to get into living weapon with Suzaku, and we're trying to get into critical range, and we just use a bunch of buffs when we're in critical range to deal out a ton of damage. So yeah, like I said, body and strength need to be at 7 so that you can use the Fanatic set. Heart is at the base number, just 5. Even though I am wearing a katana, the only reason why I have this katana is because it's with the Fanatic set. We are not using the Yasukani Magatama, or whatever it's called, the one that reduces your your requirement for a set by 1. We're not using that in this, so we do have to use all of the set, which is all 5 pieces and the katana. So yeah, that's why I'm wearing it, but we don't put any stats into heart. Stamina has to be up at 36 so that we can get B agility, because if it's any higher than, well, any lower than 36, then we will be above 70% equip weight. And so, yeah, that's one of the downsides of this. I've seen some of these builds use the Digital Deluxe Edition armor, but if you don't already have that, it's called like the Sonata or something. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the Sonata set, or the Crimson Sonata set, something like that. If you don't already have that set, you cannot get it as of this point. So if you have that, then you'll want to look for a different build, but this is just using things that you can get right now. Moving on, skill, Dex, and Spirit are the main stats that we have so far. Dex, the main weapon that we're using is a Karisagama, as you can see back there, and Karisagamas get more damage off of Dex. Skill is just another thing that raises our damage even more, and then Spirit, because we were using a lot of living weapon, Spirit helps with that. Magic you also need at 30, because we will be using quite a bit of magic for this. So pretty much the first stat that you want to get to 99 is Dex, and as you can see, I put skill up to 50. If you're a lower level than me, I recommend getting the stamina first, and then magic and Dex and Spirit. Skill is there for the damage, but you will get that as you level up. You need at least 21 Spirit, I believe. I could be wrong. I think it's somewhere between 21 and 25. But you will also need to level that up in the long run. That's why I said I should be a higher level, because skill, Dex, and Spirit should all be at 99. But yeah, as you can see, they're not. So let's move on to what I'm actually using. Full Fanatic set, as I said. As you can see, we're not using the other Magatama. That is because we're using things that give us better living weapon stuff, and tenacity is a huge thing. You need to have at least something that gives you tenacity, which if you don't know what that is, tenacity prevents your health from reaching 0 when you are either on fire or poisoned. Before I had this charm that gave tenacity, I could not tell you how many times I died to just like chip fire damage or being poisoned. It's mostly the fire damage, but it is terrible. We are mostly going to be at below 30% health, so that extra bits of fire damage is just... It's killed me more times than actual enemies have killed me. So, moving on, you want to have Fanatic set going in here. As you can see, a bunch of effects while critical. Our close combat damage when our health is in critical range with this 30% or lower gives us an extra 30% close combat damage. On top of the already 9.7% close combat damage that we get here, when we're using Suzaku, which we're definitely using Suzaku, our attacking defense is increased by 10. The key we don't really worry about, but the special effects, this triggers special effects more often, 50% more special effects when we are at critical range. So all that together is great. Because I use this for farming, as you can see, I have a bunch of Amrita stuff and gold stuff. You essentially, if you don't have something with tenacity that's charm, you want to have tenacity on one of this stuff. As you can also see, like down here, I have things that trigger once I'm in critical range, which I'm going to be in critical range pretty much all the time. Some of the best stuff that I've seen is like dealing more close combat damage when in critical range. I've seen that go up to almost 30%. I think it was in the high 20% range, but yeah, you just want to have things that give critical, things that give buffs when in critical range. And the great part about that is most of those are just basic white special effects, so you can get them just pretty easily when reforging. Then moving on, we also use, like I said, the katana, which has some stuff that's critical already, but don't really use the katana ever because we're using a Karisagama. Now, as you can see, this is one ability that you do not want to have that I need to reforge off of this, but you don't want life drain or anything like that. Also, it's best to have fire on it, but I make do with what I have. So, yeah, that's how you want to have that. There is, in fact, a place to farm better Karisagamas than what I have. The two places is the Two Kings Nioh. There is a Karisagama drop that is that has fire on it that can drop sometimes in this mission, and then at the end of the Queen's Eyes, there is sometimes the best base damage Karisagama in the game will drop from the boss of the Queen's Eyes. So, continuing on, you can pretty much use whatever you want for this. I like ranged bullseye bonuses and extra damage. As you can see, this gives me a whole bunch of extra stuff, plus Amrita earned, so pretty much whatever. Then down here, I like this one in particular because it gives me more Amrita. It gives me more Amrita earned when using living weapon, so I get more living weapon time back. Then living weapon duration is increased, and just you want stuff like that, and then also tenacity if you don't have it on the rest of your stuff. So let's go into what we actually have down here. Now, the most useless thing in this bar is actually these elixirs. We don't use elixirs that often. The only reason why I have this in here is because sometimes I'll go to the Torii Gate and just help random people, and occasionally I will be strong enough to actually like one-shot people without being in critical range, so that's pretty much the only time that I use elixirs. Moving on, we do use Protection Talisman, which lets us just tank a whole bunch of hits. Now, it does say it neutralizes a set amount of damage. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but we do just get to tank a lot of hits, and we can go through and get a whole lot more damage in because we're just tanking hits. Next, Tiger Running Scroll. This lets you run faster and you can run for longer. And I believe it also increases your dash speed, and I think it increases your stamina or your ki regeneration too, but it doesn't say that here. This is essentially because the living weapon has a time limit on it. Sometimes you need to run in between where you're going because it might be quite a bit away. Now, we can refill our timer for living weapon by killing things, but sometimes you won't be able to kill things on your way to wherever you're going, so this is what that's for. Next, Carnage Talisman. Something very special with this. Carnage Talisman essentially doubles the damage that you do. I believe it's a 100% increase, but it decreases your defense. The problem is, since we're already usually at 1 life when we're using a living weapon, the defense is not needed. I haven't been able to see any difference in living weapon time for this reduced defense, so pretty much we use this in living weapon to just deal more damage. Next, Quick Change Scroll. One of the quickest ways to get into critical range is to just go up to an enemy that you know will one-shot you, put on Quick Change, and let him hit you, because you immediately go to critical range. This also takes away your fear of dying when you're in critical range, but you don't have a living weapon ready to use. Next, we use Extraction and Palladius, if that's even how you pronounce it, we use these while in living weapon because Extraction gives us more Amrita when we attack enemies and kill them. As this says here, we get Amrita just for hitting an enemy, where normally we wouldn't. So this lets us use living weapon longer while just hitting enemies that we wouldn't one-shot. And then Palladius makes us get Amrita faster for our Amrita gauge, which when we're using living weapon means that it fills up more of our living weapon timer to use some more. And then finally we use Spirit Stones. You can use any kind that you want. I just have large Spirit Stones because that's what I have the most of. You use Spirit Stones, you break 3 of them, I believe. And so far it's worked. Anything lower than large Spirit Stones, you only need to really break 3, and it fills up your living weapon gauge. Then when you're in living weapon, to refill your timer, you just need to pop a single Spirit Stone, and it should fill it all the way back up. So now let's actually go in here and show how I have this readied. I use all 3 protection talismans. The final 2 Carnage, I only use Carnage 2 and 3. Then I use Palladius 2 and 3. Then Extraction 2 and 3. And that is it for the magic. And then in ninjutsu, I use all 3 Tiger Running, all 3 Quick Change, and that is it. I could equip more, but I don't really use the slots, so if I wanted to switch out my elixirs, I'd switch it out for something in ninjutsu. So, while we're in here, might as well talk about our Guardian Spirit. We use Suzaku for one big reason. Right here. Automatically invokes living weapon when we have no health. It puts us to 1 health, so we are in critical range. We get all the buffs that we would if we were in critical range, but we get them while using living weapon, so we can't die while using living weapon, and we get a whole bunch of these overpowered buffs because, well, the game doesn't think that you should be in critical range a whole long time, so that's pretty great. And then it also increases our Amrita earned when using living weapon by 30%. So this pretty much means every time we get a kill, we instantly go back to max Amrita, max living weapon gauge. And then some other things. When we're in critical range, this helps bring up our our living weapon so that we can use it faster, and then fire damage gets increased by 17.5%. That's really only helpful when you have a fire weapon, but as you saw, mine is not a fire weapon, so I don't really get the buff from that. Moving on, I might as well go through skills. This is just how my magic looks. I don't really have any passives. Actually, I do have some passives. The passives that I have are Extend Living Weapon Time. This is by 5. And when it says Extend Living Weapon Time by 3, it means extend it by 3 seconds. So this 5 that we're getting is 5 extra seconds of living weapon, which is really, really good. Just a note, to equip all the stuff that I have, you are going to need the Incantation Mastery 1, just that you can slot everything in. Next, in ninjutsu, this is how I have mine looking. Tiger running, then dashing, and cloud running. This just lets me run faster and reduces the ki consumed by a dash. Then quick change and dodging, which reduces my ki by an evasive roll. I also have sneak attack, because why wouldn't you have sneak attack? Then Holy Man and Medicine Man, just because I like Sacred Water and Elixirs. Then I have Snake Bite Technique, which increases my recurrent damage by 20% when I have all 3 levels. And that is it for that. Something else to note, you want Enlightenment as the mystic art for ninjutsu, and then you want Awakening as the mystic art for your magic. Now, if I remember correctly, okay, nope. Moving on, Karisagama is the main weapon. The main thing that we are going to be using is this move right here called Blade Spin. You've probably seen this some other places. This is pretty much what all of the living weapon builds use, or the living weapon Suzaku builds use this, because this pretty much deals the most damage. This is essentially pretty much the only move that I use in living weapon. Every other move that you might see in the gameplay here in a bit is an accident. You want to use Blade Spin every single time, and to increase damage for Blade Spin, we use Waxing Crescent, because if you notice, he actually swings around the sickle for Blade Spin, so to deal more damage, we use the Waxing Crescent, which increases the attack damage and ki damage used by the sickle, or caused by the sickle, not used. Then the rest of it, I just have a whole bunch of different things. This is how I have my Karisagama set up. You can essentially put in however you want. Now for the rest of the weapons, we actually use some skills from every single weapon tree. So here, we actually use, right down here, a thing called Cornered Boar, which says when we are in critical range, which means our health is 30% or lower, we get reduced damage received by 40% at full level up of Cornered Boar, which is amazing. Over in Spear, we use Cornered Tiger, because when our health is in critical range, our close combat damage is increased by 12%, which is amazing. 12% damage increase just for being critical is just perfect. Down here in the dual swords, we use Tachi Arts, which says close combat damage increase by 20% when we hit an enemy with a full life gauge. This is to increase the chances of one-shotting an enemy, which is exactly what we want to have. Now, I don't think I... Yep. Then finally, Indomitable Spirit for the sword. This increases our ki recovery speed by 40% when we are at 30% or lower health. So just a whole bunch of things that help us get more buffs when we are in critical range. So yeah, that is it for skills, and that's pretty much it for everything in this. I will put some clips of me using this on the end. I will run through the Queen's Eyes, which I do literally run through that. I don't kill very many enemies in that mission. And then I also take on the Two Kings Nioh, which I find to be a very, very, very easy mission using this build. So yeah, that's going to be it for this. Remember, I'm Ryan from Bluewood Gaming. Next video will not be in Nioh, I don't think, but we will see. So, as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.
I saw him!
He's over there!
Look like a god. How did you get in? Will you stay a while? It's been so...
He's over there!
Over here!
Intruder! This way! Over